Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tradesman Experience. This is the podcast built by tradesmen for tradesmen. My name is Josh, and of course, across the table is Mr. Nate Newton. Nate, how are you, sir?
Outstanding. Just got done with a coaching session.
I was like, you've been in that chair for a minute already.
My fucking watch is yelling at me. It's like, stand up, you fat fuck. I'm like, fuck you, Apple.
When I have the luxury of you guys coming up here for a coaching session, it always makes my life really nice.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And Matt was like, hey, you want us to come there? And I'm like, yes.
That's an option?
Wait, what? So, but I'm going to be at your guys' place tomorrow doing some observing. Observing.
So you can see what a great company looks like from inside?
I'm going to come take notes, and I'm going to share that with my listeners.
Matt will be thrilled to hear that.
I know it. So we put three people in the team through the leadership training. Matt was included. And one of the operational creations, if you will, is doing weekend end of the week leadership meetings. So you, Matt, and then your two team leaders, the four of you can evaluate what went right, what went wrong, how did the week go, and then talk about projections for next week, scheduling, operations, things like that. So the first one is really going to be tomorrow. It's going to kick off tomorrow. So I'm going to come and set off to the side and observe.
Creepy.
Yeah, a little bit creepy. Ask weird questions.
Josh sitting in the dark corner of the room.
Put a ball cap on, pull it real low.
Why aren't your pants on?
Don't worry. Dude, it's laundry day, okay?
That's how we're going with.
That's what we're going with. I'm hanging them out to dry. So you can make fun. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open this right now. Let me.
What is this fucking children's drink? It's got Sour Patch Kids on it.
Hey, I think I got it all over my microphone.
Did. That was very crisp in the headset.
It kind of blew out everywhere. This, so Ghost Energy, this Jasper introduced me to this brand in a conversation, and I'm like, sure, I'll try it. And it's a bit nostalgic. Nostalgic flavors. This one is Sour Patch. God damn it does say kids on it. It is Sour Patch Kids. That makes me feel weird drinking it.
That's how you lure the kids into the van.
I'm not going to give it to them if they don't get in. Fuck. What am I, made of money? I can't hand that shit out. Greedy little bastards. I had one yesterday that was the orange cream.
Dreamsicle?
Yep. And it tasted like Dreamsicle. It was amazing.
How much sugar is in that fucking thing?
All right. Jesus. Maybe they print it so small so you can't see it. 0.
So it's just a shitload of aspartame then, or what?
All right. Look, you and your fucking words.
Whatever artificial sweetener.
You know what? When I'm done, I'll give you the can. Okay. And you can fucking study it.
I'll throw it away for you.
It's, what's that word? Canapure? Carnapure? Carnitine? Do you know what the fuck
Carnitine?
Carnapure, carnitine?
Yeah.
That's a fucking Scrabble winner right there. I don't even know what it is. All right, let's go to the other side. Maybe that's Spanish or something. This side says natural caffeine.
No, that sounds Spanish.
I know. It's German. Shut up. I'm not an idiot. I'm going to take a drink.
I can smell it from here.
Dude, I'm telling you. You want to try it?
No.
I don't want your mouth in this
Rust
shit
your pipes,
anyway.
dude.
Dude, I'm old. I have rusty pipes, okay? Fuck.
Oh, derailed so quickly.
Oh, you're welcome, people. So, to get back on track.
We never were.
I know. I thought of that as soon as I said that. I was like, we never even started off right. Last week's conversation, we talked about positional leadership. And I got an immediate response. Dan, you're going to have to let me know. Did you as soon as that podcast was over, I think he sent me this message. Send me a message, and I read it, and I'm going to read to the audience to really
drive it home.
Well, I want to share my brilliance of my ability to articulate words on a paper.
That's also known as reading out loud. Yeah.
That's what I said. What am I, Charles Dickens?
Right.
Would you let me stay on track? God damn it. So he sends me this, and I responded. I said, I can either write you a novel or we can make next week's podcast about this topic. And he said, looking forward to hearing next week's podcast. Excellent choice. So I'm going to read what he sent us, and then you and I are going to do our normal dive in and dissection. The title of this episode is Leadership Equity. And since we talked about positional leadership last week, I thought it was a good follow-up, and then Dan's point I thought was a good segue to that. So here's what he said. He said, you guys talked about putting a person that's a good leader in a leadership role that doesn't necessarily know the craft, but is a great leader. How would you generate buy-in from the team? I look back over my career and think how many times the company I was working for brought in someone to be a manager that didn't know anything about what we did. Within a day, he held no respect from the team because he had no street cred, couldn't do the job, and couldn't relate mechanically to the team. They may have been a good leader, but there was way too much disconnect. And I was like, good question.
That is a good question.
That's a good fucking question. So,
I mean, I feel like everybody's seen this at some point, right? And it, I know you have all these bullet points listed out, but I mean, it takes the higher ups being quality leaders to make this work.
Exactly. That is, I mean, that's really the title of everything that we're going to go through. It starts at the top. And the quality of leadership, when you create a position of leadership, you need to know why you're creating that position. To create a position for the sake of creating a position, or even creating a position for the sake of delegation. That's not a position of leadership. That's an assistant. You're creating a yes man position. You need to know why you're creating this position. And then the team needs to know that this position is being created. And I give you a copy of the notes, this conversation.
Too bad I can't read.
Probably only ever happened once. So the first point I have here, it's like, so what we're going to do in this conversation is we're going to start at the top, big picture, and kind of run this through a funnel to help answer Dan's question here on how to create connection and what is the best approach, and how, from an operational standpoint, how can you go through these? And the first one is transparency. So to your point, it's starting with the top. Excuse me. Wow, that stuff. I'm going to slide that away. I almost died. All right. Burp in a can. That's what that is. That's the flavor. The transparency has to start with the top. So what I mean by that is if the company is going to create a position, all right, back to position of leadership, then everyone on the team, or at least in that department, needs to know that this position is being created. I'm a fan of promoting within. All right. I'm not a fan, and this is the contradiction or dichotomy. I'm not a fan of turning your best technician and putting them in a leadership position. You and I talk about that often. But if you're going to create that position of leadership, you have to be transparent about it. Now, that should create some proactivity, right? You need to have some foresight. You need to be planning for this and say, all right, we've got X number of people in this department or on our team now. We need to create a leadership position. You guys literally just went through this. But introduce that idea to the team. I go, all right, there's 6 of you, there's 8 of you, there's X number of you in this department or on this team right now. We need to create a leadership position, and then they need to know why.
Because you little fuckers can't do this shit on your own. That's why. Like, I was sitting there thinking about it, like that. Like this person, that you bring in that's not necessarily part of the trade that you're in. I almost feel like that person would typically end up being somebody that leads the other leaders, right? Like like a superintendent as opposed to a foreman, you know, not necessarily being in direct contact with the people doing the hands-on work. You know, like personally, that's how I would see it, like especially within our business. Because that is kind of hard to jump in there with if you're trying to, you know, take on all the technical people. You know, like that is a difficult place to be in.
So where does the difficulty lie? Okay, out of the gate, there is opportunity for a language barrier.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know, and someone that has leadership skills but lacks the craft skill or the trade skill, yes, there's going to be again a language barrier there. What happens is when you don't have transparency with the team and you don't create opportunity to promote within, and you bring somebody from the outside, I'm not sure that it's as much as, well, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I think it's more like animosity that they didn't have the opportunity that was presented from someone from the outside.
Right.
And one of the points on here is, I've got his opportunity, you know, be transparent, say, hey, this is what we're going to look at doing. And then having the opportunity for conversations to be had with the team to possibly promote within. Somebody may immediately think, okay, I think, you know, I want the general manager's job. I want the foreman job. I want the superintendent job. And I'm okay with that excitement. I'm also going to put you through real life scenarios. I'm also going to give you very clearly defined roles, responsibilities, and expectations. And through that process, you may find out that what I want out of this position and what you thought it was, maybe that's where the disconnect is.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, because you're probably going to have somebody that's going to approach you. You know, let's say you do throw that option out there, the opportunities there. You're going to have somebody approach you that you know that they shouldn't be in that position. They think they want it, you know. So they're like, I'm going to show you why you don't want this.
Because, so when you define a position, under expectations, there needs to be a skill set is going to be part of those expectations. Even if you're creating a position that we're talking about, a leadership position, you still have to create skill set expectations. Let's face it. If they bring somebody in that has never done the work before, you have a tremendous gap to bridge.
Right. Well, and it's going to land on that person. If you really think that they're that good for the position, you have to understand that they're going to be on a learning curve for the first couple months that they're in there, right?
Absolutely.
And that person has to be willing to fucking learn. You know, they have to be like, okay, yeah, you're right. This isn't my job to perform this work, but I need to understand what they're doing and why they're doing it in order to do this effectively. So, I mean, it's going to be a learning curve for everybody, right? But your team has to have buy-in on that to where they're like, yeah, we fucking understand that he's never done this, but, you know, we'll help show them what we do, you know?
Yes, thank you, because that is part of the transparency throughout the whole process. But I feel that if you don't offer the opportunity to promote within, and you don't have the clearly defined role, responsibilities, and expectations, you're now creating opportunity for negative conversations. You're taking a chance on people's ego getting in the way. You're taking a chance on animosity being developed. I mean, I couldn't imagine being in a company and then I show up and it's like, hey guys, this is Nate. He's going to be, he's our new service manager. And I'm like, when the fuck were we looking for a service manager? Right. Okay. Yeah. What does Nate know? So part of creating the opportunity to promote within is if you have someone that is a great fit, good. You know, now you have someone that's already in tune with the culture. They already understand the expectations. Now there's a chance for them to move into a different role. But if no one on the team wants it, you just eliminated complaining.
Right. They're like, hey, we gave you an option. You fucking turned it down.
Yes.
Or we didn't think you were a good fit for the job, you know. But,
you know, and that's a conversation that you're going to have during that, and that one-on-one and be like, look, as it sets now, you don't meet the expectations and requirements to fulfill this position. Because what a lot of people in the trade do, they depend on their craft for promotion. They depend on the skill to make them successful. And if you may have someone that is phenomenal at the skill, but is not good with communicating with other people. They're not good at organization. They're not good at system implementation. They're not good at building relationships with clients. They're not good at these things that a lot of these leadership positions require. I mean, look at how much administrative goes into a leadership position.
Ugh, goddamn, dude. The fucking paperwork. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, they don't want to do that part, you know?
A lot of them don't. But again, if you don't create that level of transparency and inform and educate the team as to what that role really means. I mean, I know when I made the transition, the first time I made the transition into a management role, I was only in the tools 50% of the time. And the other 50% of the time was admin.
Right.
Or trying to make pissed off customers happy and giving money away because we didn't have, for other reasons, until that technician ended up leaving and we were able to clean house a little bit. But, my role was putting out fires, dealing with upset customers, administrative work. And then during the busy seasons, I would jump in a service truck and help. But again, it's like, just be open and honest with the team. And when you have someone in that shows interest, okay, that individual needs to go through an entire interviewing process for that position. It doesn't fucking matter if they're already on the company or not.
Right. You're like, oh, I already know this person. It's like, do you?
You know that?
Like, you uncover so much shit about people in the interviewing process that it's like, you might be sitting there going, wow, I did not know that motherfucker was like that. Like that could be a real eye opener for you.
Because I'm going to ask you interview questions now that are relevant to the position that we're hiring for. And that's going to create awareness with the individual as to what that expectation is. I think a lot of people get wrapped up in the fact, too, that immediately they think with a promotion comes compensation. Well, with compensation comes responsibility. And again, are you willing to only be on the tools 50% of the time? And you have to do all of this admin work. Now you have to have difficult conversations. For example, if it's like, look, you've been complaining about team member A, you've been complaining to me, this position is going to address that. Are you willing to have difficult conversations in a leadership format, not chewing their fucking ass because they don't have the same skill set you do.
Right.
See, this is...
You're out there motherfucking people.
Exactly. Yeah. This can be a very slippery slope climbing up to this position from within.
Well, it's kind of crazy how people... They turn into the things that they hated about their last boss once they get in that position, Well,
it's like people parent like they hated to be parented.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the exact same principle. It's like, I'll never fucking treat my kids that way. And then when you do, you hit them a lot, okay?
You're like, oh, wow, that was effective.
Was it, though?
Sorry about the trauma.
I turned out okay. All right.
Okay.
Very self-promoting. Okay,
Shut
good job.
Bill.
You want to get your own wiener out of your mouth? Do something better? Good job. So, create that transparency, create that opportunity, and then you being proactive about developing the position. And again, that gives you time to interview the people that you have on the team that are interested. Part of that being proactive too is, okay, let's test fire this. All right, you're interested in this position. Let's put this on a probation period. You're going to be in this position for X number of days, 30 days, whatever it is, and you're going to operate at this capacity in this position, and we're going to manage it and see how well you do. You may put that person in that position, and they go 2 weeks and go, I don't want to do this. By the way, do you know how many times I've seen that happen?
Right.
You promote within, and you give them the position, and then because they didn't understand the responsibilities, now they have to start operating in that capacity, and they don't want it.
Well, I think especially if they didn't act like a leader before they went into that leadership position and they're promoted within, there's animosity there, Like the other guy's like, dude, I didn't listen to fucking Dave over there. That guy's a fucking dumbass. If they didn't carry the traits going into it, there's not going to be a lot of buy-in from the team on that person getting there.
It's a very, very good observation. That's which was why you need to kind of be in tune with your team.
Mm-hmm.
You need to know who is the influencer, who is the leader of the group. So now that's a very, very smart observation. So when you put them in that probation period, you may be getting feedback from the team. It's like, I don't fucking want Nate in this position. Like,
Right.
it's like, dude, if Nate's going to be my boss, I'm going to quit. Again, you know how many times I've heard something like that be said?
Right.
But like, it's all, man, if I got to work for this guy, like, I'm going to fucking quit.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, goddamn, what is really going on in my company?
Clearly, I don't have
Yeah.
this shit under control at the moment.
Yeah. So, defining that role, responsibility, and expectations, put somebody in it as a probation period. Again, being proactive allows you the opportunity to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it is a good fit, now we just need to work to replace that individual with the position that they had.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe there is a transition period where, and this is my experience, a lot of times with service managers, department leaders, we would start them out as a working position.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I was in the truck 50% of the time. That's how we would start that transition. It gave us time to hire and interview, properly.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's the strategy that you take. But let's say that you do hire within. So I already said you need to interview them like it's their first time,
Mm-hmm.
because you're interviewing them for a new position.
Right.
So the interview process is the same. And the onboarding process is exactly the same.
Mm-hmm. Which is going to be a little weird because, like, especially let's say you've got them on the tools 50% of the time,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're in a leadership position 50% of the time. Well, you're going to be bird dogging the shit out of them, and they're going to be like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like, you've seen me do this
Mm-hmm.
job before, and it's like, no. We're going through the motions here.
Yep.
We're doing all of the things.
I had a conversation with a company last week, and they've had a position change with an individual. And I told them, I said, okay, you need to put that person through the onboarding process. I said, the onboarding process is not just for new hires. It's also for anytime there's a position change in the company, go through the onboarding process.
Right.
You may be able to expedite it by a week or 10 days,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to go through the onboarding process.
Right. You got to see how all that shit integrates, right? I mean,
It's completely necessary. So putting them through the onboarding process, again, you expedite that experience for them.
mm-hmm.
They're going to decide if they want it or not.
Right.
The creating a kind of a grace period, a transition period,
Mm-hmm.
is going to be important too, because even with an onboarding process, even with promoting within, you as a leader or owner, you can't expect that person to fire on all cylinders in that position day one.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be you're not looking for perfection in those first couple of weeks. You're looking at their ability to learn and adapt,
Mhm.
right? If you go in there and like, I thought he was going to be able to just nail this stuff. It's like, dude,
Right.
you got to give him fucking time. You can't jump in there and rodeo first day. you know?
Which is why the probation period helps.
Mhm.
In the probation period can be different than the onboarding process.
Mhm.
You don't have to put them through those things at the same time. But if you do a 2 or 3 week onboarding process and then a 2 or 3 week probation period, you're going to spend 6 weeks.
Mhm.
Okay. You should still be recruiting at this time,
Mhm.
either recruiting for people for this leadership position or recruiting people for replacing this person in the role that they had.
Mhm.
But you still need to be recruiting. This isn't, okay, well, let's wait and see if this works out. And then if not, then we've got to get on Indeed. It's like, no, don't.
I mean, if you're listening to the fucking podcast anyway, you should have somebody on deck for those positions
All the
already.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the time. So looking at promoting within, that's kind of the simple steps of that difficult process. Be transparent, be proactive, define the role, define the position with extreme clarity, and interview internally for that position, onboarding process, probation period, like do all of those things.
Mhm.
Good. You're going to save yourself a whole lot of fucking heartache and time down the road. Because one point that I want to circle back to before we start talking about hiring from the outside in is you're creating this opportunity for people.
Mhm.
And if no one wants it, or if someone does want it and then they they can't meet the capacity or the requirements. Everybody now knows that, okay, we have to bring somebody from the outside. Everybody knows now. Everybody's on the same fucking page.
Yeah. Yep.
So now you're creating buy-in in the acceptance of this role. Not a person.
Right. Yeah.
Acceptance of the role. That there's going to be a leadership position here. There's a role that's going to be here.
I mean, and I think, especially if you're bringing someone in that doesn't have the skill set, I think that person needs to be introduced to your team before they're given the position, right? I mean, we do that with anybody we hire. We send them out in the shop. We're like, if they don't like you, you don't work here. So it's like, you're not going to come in and fuck up our culture, the way shit works.
But here's the thing, too, is to that point, that's why going back and defining the role, responsibilities, and expectation is so important. Because if the team doesn't understand that you don't have to have their skill set for this position, they're just going to assume that this person has to have their skill set. All right. So when creating the roles, responsibilities, and expectations, you have to define what that skill set requirement is. And the team needs to be aware of that. It's like, look, this position does not have to be a master carpenter, a master fabricator, or a top HVAC technician.
That's your guys' job.
Because that's the role that you play. That's the position that you have. But again, creating that clarity, having that transparency with the team, it's like, look, bringing an individual onto this position, these are as far as skill set and the craft goes, this is what we're looking for. Excuse me. It's like maybe they need to at least have had some exposure, to the skill, to the craft.
Right.
Maybe they need to understand some of the language. They may not necessarily need to be a journeyman. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and make sure that your team is aware that they're going to need to help with this too, and if you run a fucking quality crew, they're going to be all over it. They're going to be stoked to fucking teach somebody this kind of shit, Again, getting buy-in. If they should be excited. Getting their buy-in and for them accepting the position and they're excited about it. People also, it's very similar to introducing a system to a company. People need to know why it exists and how it benefits them. All right, why does this position exist and how does it benefit me? You need to be able to answer those questions. Right.
I know when I was building the infrastructure, the framework of my company and creating leadership positions, accessibility to me was one of the whys. Or how it was going to benefit them.
Right.
It's like, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to create this position over here. We're going to hire another technician, whatever. One of the benefits is you're going to have better accessibility to me. And everybody was like, fuck yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, because they just want to be around you all the time, don't they?
No, not exactly. But when they needed me, I wasn't available because I was face
Doing
deep
dumb
into
shit.
a furnace or having a conversation with a client about, maintenance on an air conditioner or whatever, when I had a guy over here like waiting for me to call them back.
Right.
So the value of my time increased as we built the team. So the role and position that I fulfilled needed to increase as well.
It just dawned on me too that bringing somebody in that doesn't have the skill set that you do, like, can you imagine the way that they're going to perceive the way you do things, and that they're probably going to be able to bring some different ideas to the table, like on how maybe something's built or, whatever processes it is you go through. Like, we get so track minded on everything that it's like you have this person that has this completely different view from what you guys are always going through. And then I'd be like, why do you guys do it like that? Like, what if you did it like this? That could be a fucking huge addition, like, as long as people are open-minded and your team's like, they're not like, fuck you, newbie.
Right.
Like,
so can I tell you a short story?
No.
That
I have a feeling you're going to anyway.
that really exemplifies that point. This semi hauling a load down the highway gets wedged under an overpass. I don't know if it was a train or whatever, but the tractor trailer gets wedged under the overpass. They obviously they had to block it all off. And then as the people are standing around, everybody's trying to decide, okay, how are we going to get this thing unwedged from here? And a little girl in the crowd overheard the conversation, and she says, what if you guys let the air out of the tires?
That's the only thing she's seeing, right? That's right at eye height for her.
She has no experience in engineering, in anything that they were using to solve that problem.
Right.
She said, why don't you let the air out of the tires? And they did, and they got the truck unstuck. To your point, it's like everyone's perspective is a different perspective. It doesn't have less or greater value because they don't possess the same skills that you do.
Right.
You have to be open-minded, which goes back to the ego thing. And but it also goes back to like, okay, why does this position exist? How is it going to benefit me? That transparency should mitigate a lot of that ego problem.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we're going to bring someone in that's going to help elevate everyone to success, which we're going to get to how to do that and like that point, because a lot of leaders make mistakes in that process. But so if you're hiring from the outside in, which means no one in the company wants the position, or no one in the company can meet the expectations for the position, creating that transparency is important. Creating the buy-in is important. Why does the position exist, and how does it benefit the team? And then back to roles, responsibilities, and expectations, defining that skill set. And so if you have someone in the team that's already a leader in the team, and again has influence over the team, have a conversation with them individually, and say, okay, we're creating this position. What is it that you would, if we were going to bring a leader in, what is it that you expect? All right, I need to get that conversation out, because I'm pretty sure they're going to focus on skill set of the craft.
Right.
Well, do they know how to weld? Do they know how to frame a wall? Do they? I want to get that conversation out, because I'm going to say, okay, this is what this position requires. Why do you think being a master framer is a requirement for this position? And let's just have this conversation. Let's just get that fucking out of the way right now.
Right. Because I mean, they're ultimately going to get to talk themselves out of whatever shit fucking attitude they have about it, right?
Yeah.
And be like, oh, I guess maybe they don't. Huh.
Yeah. So what level of understanding or skill set does the person assuming the leadership role need to possess? Again, you do need to have a minimum. I think it's important to have a lot of jobs aren't going to hire leadership positions without some level of experience that's relative to the position. And I know when you get into the craft, so just you need to identify that, and that way the team is understanding. It's like, okay, this is why they don't need to be a journeyman carpenter to fulfill this position.
And the communication ability of that person that you bring in is going to be so fucking critical to all this. I mean, we preach it all the time. Communication is everything in leadership, but they need to have that before they show up, because they have to be able to communicate with these people in a way that's not condescending, that's not motherfucking them,
Yeah. There's a point I want to make as we're going through this. This is not about getting permission from your team to grow your company.
Right.
That's not what this is.
That's a good point.
It's about getting buy-in for growth of the success of them in the company. Because if you need to do it, it's what you need to do. Being proactive and understanding this, there's plenty of time to have these conversations. Plenty of time. If you're reactively hiring, I would tell you it doesn't matter who you bring in anyway. It's probably going to be a shitstorm.
Right.
So being proactive gives you the opportunity to have these conversations, because at the end of the day, if this is the decision that you make, then the team needs to understand that, look, this is the direction that we're going.
Right. And here's why. Trust me.
Support me in this decision. If it goes sideways, I'll own it.
Right.
I will get rid of them.
I'm the one that still has to suffer the consequence of this shit.
That's right. And part of that buy-in too is, especially bringing someone from the outside. But either way, part of that buy-in is getting support. Look, I need you to support me on this.
Right.
I'm not interested in bringing somebody on board that is more technical than you. which means there's going to be times that you need to help,
Right.
that they're going to lean on you because of your technical ability.
Mm-hmm. I think almost having like, you know, as you're trying to provide whatever small amount of skill set these guys need to perform the job, you almost need to kind of assign one of your best techs to like kind of coach them through that, right? You know,
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be a great way to kind of fast track that, you know, like kind of be like, dude, you're going to be with him for a week. Like he's going to show you some shit.
Yes, there's, I'm looking at my notes here. Yep, there it is. So let's, we'll get to that. There's 2 points I want to just kind of brush through again, is the interview and hiring process.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So from the outside in, you got to make sure that you're interviewing correctly, that you're hiring correctly, and then the onboarding process again, which onboarding process could also include a probation period.
Mm-hmm.
But those are so necessary. And so I wanted to brush through those because it gets me to your point. The mistake that most people make, regardless of promoting within or hiring from out, is when they assume a leadership role or a position of leadership, the first thing they do is table their agenda.
Mm-hmm.
That's the worst fucking thing that you can do as a new leader.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you have already been in the company, you take on that position, do not push your agenda.
Yeah. You walk in and you're like, all right, these are the changes we're making. And
Yep.
it's like, whoa, motherfucker, you just got here. Like, what are you doing?
So there's a word that I'm going to use, and we're going to come, we're going to dive into, I got to quit drinking that. God
Jesus
damn.
fucking Christ, man.
God damn, I don't
coming
know
out
what
of
that
both
is.
ends, you stinky fuck. Stuck in this tiny room with you.
What is this? The word is equity.
Mm-hmm.
All right. If you come into a position as a new leader and you table your agenda, instead of asking questions, instead of observing the culture, instead of indoctrinating yourself, instead of building relationships, instead of asking questions and getting trust, you're spending equity that you don't have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think people need to understand that. When you say equity, you mean it like equity in a home,
Yes.
not equality type shit.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes. It is. So as a leader, you are starting out at zero.
Mm-hmm.
And it's your responsibility to build relationships with the people on your team, so there's trust. So you build equity with them.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that, part of my asking questions as a new leader is going to be, hey, what is it that you would like to see improve around here?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you would like to see different? What is it over the last year that you guys have been doing that's not working?
Mm-hmm. Leadership equity is buy-in pretty much, right?
Yes.
That's how you generate the equity.
You generate the equity. And just like what you said with a home, the more you invest into the individual,
The more equity you
yes.
get.
Thank you. So that investment may be time, it may be resources, it may be money.
Mm-hmm. Coke machine in the break room.
It may be a Coke machine in the break room.
Right.
It really might.
Mm-hmm.
Simple things like that. But you need to understand kind of what makes people tick, but spend time with people. Once you build equity, once you are able to identify what some of the perceived problems, all right, I'm going to say perceived problems, because what people perceive to be as problems aren't always problems. It's just relevant to them and how they feel and what they think.
It's fishing.
Yes. You start solving some of those. Guess what solving problems does? Builds equity.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going to start tabling some of my ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm going to start tabling my agenda. Now I'm going to start having a conversation with the people that influence. I'm going to pull you in and say, hey, Nate, this is something that I've seen. This is what I'm thinking about how we can improve this or solve this problem. But I wanted to get your take on it first.
Mm-hmm.
How much fucking equity did I just build with you?
Right. Yeah.
Right. As a new leader.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I'm going to do.
You give a fuck, Like,
yes.
That's any quality leader needs, the people that you lead need to know that you give a fuck.
Mm-hmm. And knowing that you care and you're building that trust and coming in as a new leader, I'm also going to have honest conversations. I'm going to, I'll come to you and say, look, Nate, from what I hear, you're the best fucking welder here. I would like to be able to lean on you because I'm not a better welder than you. And as a matter of fact, the hands-on skill set, I don't have near as much as experience as you do. Mm-hmm. So I would like the ability to ask you questions and lean on you. That's going to help me. It's going to help you, and it's going to help the rest of the team do the things we need to do.
Mm-hmm. Shit.
Tell me.
Who is going to be upset about that conversation?
Thank you.
No one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If they are, then you have another problem to address.
I think you just need to get rid of that one.
But again, okay, let's back up. You look at what we've walked through, creating the transparency, creating the expectations, getting buy-in for the acceptance of the role. When that leader comes in and has that conversation, all of this is already in motion. Mm-hmm. So developing equity in that individual out of the gate, that's exactly where I'm going to go. Mm-hmm. And those are exactly some of the conversations I'm going to have.
Right. Well, and like if you're bringing this person in, like you really should send them through the leadership training before they ever even before they ever step foot on the shop floor, like, hey, this is how you're going to go about this, because like you said, most leaders, when they show up,
they pound their chest. Yeah. This is how we're going to do things.
Yeah. Saddle up, boys. Yeah. And it's like, no. This is the way that works right here. We're going to do that. And
it's important for people to understand the concept of building equity in people, because throughout our time together, if I come in as a leader and you're my top technician, you and I are going to have disagreements. Mm-hmm. Period.
Yeah.
It is going to happen. When that happens, I'm spending equity now.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If I don't have any equity to spend, mm-hmm. now our relationship is in a deficit.
Right.
For me to get out of that is going to take far more effort and work, time, money, resources to correct than if I would have just started out in the beginning, mm-hmm. building equity with the people on my team.
Right.
And your point, and I appreciate it, I put a quote on here from John Maxwell. It says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Mm-hmm. And a lot of leaders make the mistake. When they table their agenda, the perception is that they're in it for themselves, that I'm here for me, mm-hmm. and we are going to make me great.
Right.
We are going to get things done where my metrics make me look great. Mm-hmm. That's the perception. I don't care if it's real or not.
Right.
That's the perception when you step into a leadership role and you table your agenda first. The leader's job is to elevate people, create opportunity, and help everyone, achieve success. And I've got a note that says, without building equity and trust, the team will resort back to judgment of skill and craft. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if I don't have equity in you and I'm telling you to do things, your ego is going to say, motherfucker can't do my job. Mm-hmm. He doesn't know what I know. Right. Doesn't have the skill that I do. Why the fuck does he get to tell me what to do? Mm-hmm. And that's how that culture is going to be.
Yep. Yeah, that's like bringing in the boss's kid as a leader. Like, people do that. They throw their kids out there in leadership positions, and they're like, fuck no, I've watched that kid grow up. He's an asshole. Like,
yeah. That kid has probably an equity deficit.
Oh, already, before he ever even showed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's so important when starting a leadership position, mm-hmm. and how to approach it. Whether if you have the ability to promote within, or if you're going to bring somebody out. The conversation, I think it was last, you were talking about Steve. Steve is not a welder.
Nope.
Steve is not only not a welder, he has no welding experience.
I've also never seen Steve in a pair of pants.
He wears
fucking booty shorts,
Ranger panties.
Yeah. I mean, that dude's fucking jacked though. So
yeah. I mean,
I'd be fucking rocking that shit too.
I would look like a flamingo if I had shorts on that small.
You don't have the ass to be a flamingo, Josh.
Oh, yeah. I was just thinking about the stature of the legs.
How they're connected to the body.
There's an image for you, ladies. Steve is a great example, that you shared, because he doesn't have the skill set of the craft, but what he does have is the skill set of leadership.
And he already has buy-in from the guys too, because they've all met him. They know who he is, and like we threw a fundraiser for Grant when his mom passed away. Steve was there chopping it up with everybody, and like he's, like you said, he's infectious, so it's like it's really easy for that guy to get the buy-in and build the equity, because he does genuinely give a fuck about people. And so like that's why we would want to bring him in. That's why I brought him up yesterday, is because dude, all the fucking boxes, they're all checked with him. So it's like like I could see the pathway to bringing him in, like especially if we had like 4 departments and 4 very high performing people. Steve would be perfect for leading those people and getting them all the things they need and help perpetuating people forward. And
that's right.
Yeah.
But that goes back, you would understand clearly what that role is,
right? What
the expectations are.
Yeah, he doesn't need to know how to weld to do that shit.
That's right.
Well, and dude, he's such a fucking sponge, dude. He'd be in there trying to learn,
Well, so here's what I appreciate about that, and I'm going to use a different word than sponge because you're absolutely correct. But he's coachable.
Yeah.
Right. So someone coming into a leadership position must be coachable. You don't have to know all of the answers, and you don't have to be the best at the craft to be the best leader. You just have to know how to best serve the people on your team.
Well, I mean, shit, look at Matt and I. We sought out coaching,
Right.
like we pay for this shit.
Yeah.
Like that's, like anybody that owns a business and has success with it, they are coachable people, they fucking learn. Because if you're going to be out there and be bullheaded, well, I own the fucking business. It's like, do you? Or do you own a job?
Yeah. Or even on a different scale, talking about, it's like, well, this guy can't fucking do what I do. Why does he get to tell me what to do? It's like, that's an ego problem. Yeah. Okay. The reality is you don't understand how that person can help you be more successful. And if they don't have the right person in that position, that might be the case. But why would you go into that relationship with that mindset of going, well, let's see what this motherfucker can do for me?
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's what I said earlier. The team has to be supportive, and you have to create that expectation of support. And having like 3 drinks of that thing is tearing me up.
I can smell it every time you burp.
You're welcome.
Grossing me
no,
out,
you're
dude.
not gross. Is that when you're licking your microphone? God, it's so bad. Thanks, Jasper. The orange dreamsicle did not make me do that.
I'm sure.
It's something about that Sour Patch Kids, I guess. Oh, Lord.
I'm so glad I talked so much shit about that before you opened it.
Me too. I am too. It's really, everything that's happening is supporting your ignorant statement. You have to have support from the team. So having that closed door, that egotistical mindset of like, what's in it for me, be supportive, be transparent, have conversations, build that. You're responsible for building relationships with people. Don't wait for them to come to you. So this is very two-sided. Don't wait for leadership to come to you and try to develop that relationship. Because I've talked to companies and they're like, oh, I don't even think they know I'm here. Well, that's your fault.
Yeah, that's a you thing.
Yeah, that's a you problem.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Are you really doing not so little that you're not bleeping on the radar at all? Like, come on, man. Like, fucking do better. Like, you've got to be supportive, and you got to be intentional about those things. And you don't have to know how to do a single craft to possess that. Just, it's a you thing.
Right.
So, as always, getting questions is always helpful. Dan, thank you for sending me that. And I'm looking forward to his response. Before I shift, is there anything finally you want to add to the leadership equity?
No. I think
Cool.
I think that was a great question, and I thought that was a good. Like, people don't think about this. They're like, we can't bring anybody in from the outside that can't.
Yeah.
You might even. It might even be easier to find better leaders doing it. Hiring somebody that's not a part of that.
Yeah. The concept of leadership equity came to me.
Like
a lot of things do. probably just 3 or 4 months ago.
Mhm.
And I've been working diligently to make it tangible
Mhm.
and create methods of building equity. What spends equity? Now the leadership equity is part of the leadership training.
Mhm.
But the concept of leadership equity just dawned on me recently.
Mm.
And now that I've dove into it, I'm like,
Makes a lot of sense.
yeah. Oh, this solves a lot of problems. Right? This is a great identifier
Mhm.
of issues in leadership. So if you got to spend that equity, you better have it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take a sidebar here, and I will tell you, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I felt it was a good opportunity for me to kind of share. I had a meeting this morning. John and I meet once a month, and him and I had a conversation that I've had several times lately. And the conversation is about the quality of our podcasts when you and I were going through our shit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Don't ask me. I appreciate when people are honest with me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
How am I supposed to course correct if I don't know that?
I appreciate people are honest with me. And I've had multiple conversations lately where people are opening up and being like, this wasn't great.
Mm-hmm.
You know, felt like you guys were complaining a lot. I felt like you guys were doing this. I felt, what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this conversation with John today. And after he sent me this email, and he's because he was also talking about, he's like, when I started listening to you guys early on, he said, you guys said some stuff that I didn't agree with, so I stopped listening.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I felt like you guys were beating up single owner operators. And I said, man, I know that's never our intention.
Mm-hmm.
And as I thought about his statement, I said, okay, it's probably when we bash like the one guy in the truck
yeah,
that's like destroying the market,
right?
That doesn't care about quality, doesn't
Mm-hmm.
care about the customer.
Stereotypical, the negative stereotype of the trades.
The guy in a van that says he can kind of, bullshit. I like to say Chuck in a truck that don't give a fuck. That's, but I'm like, as I was thinking, I said, well, that's really what, we were talking about, because I also had a conversation with a guy one day, and he was like, man, he's like, you guys talk about these old service trucks. He's like, I've got a 1985 3/4-ton Chevy. He's like, but it's clean. I'm like, good.
Yeah, that's not what we were talking about.
No, I have nothing against a 1985 Chevy. I don't care what it is, as long as it's fucking clean and you have a logo on it.
Mm-hmm.
You're
professional.
So the reason I say that is it's relevant to the first part of his email. He said, I remembered my point for referring back to earlier episodes and why I stopped listening. My perception of it was that you and Nate were constantly preaching you had to be on your game 100% of the time, and I called bullshit. I'm sure that's probably not what you meant, but that's how I took it at that time. Eventually, I started listening again and got over myself. But when you went through the divorce, I noticed that's when the cadence changed and you guys were honest about how hard stuff was, which I appreciated. I know now from experience that you do have to be on your game, but at the same time, it is hard. Either way, glad stuff is going well for you now, and thanks for a good meeting today.
That's not the first time I've heard that. We make it sound like you just have to do all this shit and that it's not hard.
Right.
I had a friend brought that up to me. He's like, hey, you make it sound like, you should just be able to do this shit. I'm like, no, this is like the most difficult fucking shit you'll ever do. That's why we're talking about it. It's because it's fucking hard.
2 points I want to make. One is to that. I do feel sometimes we glorify leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think of, and I also think that I probably glorify my position with the HVAC company. I've never fucking done anything harder in my life than run that company for 5 years. I've never had more difficult conversations in my life than I had in those 5 years. I had life-changing shit happen, in those 5 years. It was every single day I had to deal with some bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Like nothing was perfect ever.
Mm-hmm.
What I have now is the opportunity to look back and go, the bad shit, most of it wasn't that bad. It was my inability as a leader to solve it or to deal with it or to make correct course changes. That's where the real problem lied, you know. So a lot of the problems were just amplified because my lacking capacity as a leader, and that's true. So I do sometimes think, I'm like, God, do I glorify, the company that I built and the team that I had? I feel like I do. The reality was, fuck, it was hard.
I think I can kind of sum this up. When Matt and I started our business, we were doing it all wrong. We had no leadership. We had no culture, no nothing. That was so fucking hard. To try and keep that business above water, operating that way, was so fucking difficult that once we started to implement the shit that we learned throughout coaching, it's still hard, but it makes it manageable. It's a much better hard. Yeah, exactly. It's a productive hard. Yeah. And so I think maybe that's where some of that comes from. But the reason why we get together every week and we fucking put this podcast out is because we're trying to show you the ways to do this stuff better and almost easier, if you will, And I think that's probably where we get off on that, is that we're so excited that we found a way that's fucking working out, that it's, we probably sell it too hard. It's like, I feel like we tell people, we're like, dude, this is some fucking difficult shit, but maybe he's saying that the cadence has changed, and maybe we were kind of preachy about it back then, but I don't go back and listen to those episodes because they're fucking terrible.
I don't listen to them either, but here's, so that was the one point. Here's a second point that I wanted to make, was how fucking grateful I am that not only John, but other people that I've talked to are willing to be honest with me. But here's the more important part: continuing to support us when shit got fucking sideways. Yeah,
that's fucking huge, man. I really appreciate that. Yeah,
and the reality is, I'm not going to apologize for the way things were when you and I were going through our dark shit, because the reality of it is we put it on display. Now, it's always funny looking back because you think you're doing better than you are, than you really are. And then people that are so fucking in tune that literally have 200 hours of you and I, having conversations, and they can immediately pick up and go, something's wrong. I think that I'm probably doing better, and they're like, this motherfucker is driving off of a cliff right now. So I'm not having this part of the conversation to apologize for it. I'm having the part of this conversation to say how fucking grateful I am, for the experience that I had, for the experience that you had, for the opportunity to share with people real life shit, that it's fucking hard. And I'm not one to tell you that it's not.
Yeah. I guess it probably did bleed through a little more because we were at one of the lowest points of our lives, and I think that, as a man, we always put the facade on, right? And I ran out of fucking energy to continue to put that facade on, that was the most emotional and raw I have been with everybody, every relationship that I have been just raw with people, and it's like
running out of emotional currency. It eliminates options. You just got to fucking do it.
You're just like, fuck it, dude. Like, I don't fucking care anymore,
The other thing about that is this conversation, leadership equity, position of leadership, our interview with Shalais, I feel like we are so much better on the other side of that now. I feel like the quality of me as an individual is better. I'm not saying that this content's better, or I just feel like me as an individual is much better. And I feel like I'm able to add more value because I have more experiences now.
Yeah, that suffering aspect of life, opens up your eyes to what fucking matters, and what happens if you fail, and you go through suffering like that, and you're just like, so what if it fucking fails? Like, we're going to give it everything we got, but we can accept that we can survive that side, if it does go out from underneath you.
And the last point I want to make on all of this is because this point is very relevant to leadership, to business owners, and to people in general, is we do a really good job of ostracizing ourselves and making ourselves believe that we're the only ones going through it.
Mm-hmm.
Leadership is fucking hard.
Mm-hmm.
You're not the only one suffering from it.
Right.
No, you're not. You're not on this island by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have experiences in life, and when you have experiences in business, and when you grow and develop yourself as a leader and as a better fucking human being, it's easy for that narrative to shift and go, God, nobody knows what I'm going through.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knows what I'm experiencing. Nobody knows what I feel right now. And the reality is, this entire fucking audience, this entire community that we have built, everybody understands.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows. And that's why I said, like, the fact that people still supported us, even though they were like, okay, they're going to turn it around. I know they're going to do better. Like, they're fucking getting drunk and complaining.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that people still fucking stood by us is just proof that this community is what they understand, and it is what I wanted it to be.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, I think that's what has brought people to us, that they all felt like they were on an island at one point, right? Like you're saying, but they got involved in this, and then they're like, oh shit. Okay.
Yeah.
And then there's a direction to head in.
Right.
You know,
when I do coaching and somebody starts off a sentence with going, "Man, I don't know if you've ever seen this before, but,"
yes,
and I'm like, I dealt with it twice this morning, kind of thing, and they're always surprised. They're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, I said, "What you're experiencing in this point of the journey, everyone experiences.
Mm-hmm.
The feeling is going to be different,
right?
But everyone, they're like, really?" I'm like, yeah, really. I experienced it myself yesterday, kind of thing. You know, yeah, this is part of the journey. So, I wanted to read that email that John sent me this morning.
Really appreciate the honesty. You know, that's I love hearing shit like that. Mm-hmm. You know, and he's right. You know, like maybe we probably were. You know, and then. But
I refuse to go back and listen to him.
Yeah, but I mean,
it's irrelevant now.
Yeah, but going through all this stuff, like not even just the divorces and whatnot, but just going through running a business and our path of leadership, like that, we evolve, you know, and that's all we've done is get better. You know, do we slip up and fall sometimes? Fuck yeah, we do.
Did we pick a wrong direction to get better? Yeah, we're like, okay, we got to go over here.
Hey, we need to course correct here.
Yeah, that's possible. But anyway, I wanted to share that with you. I want to share it to the listeners, and I just want to tell everybody, like, thank you, like, for the honesty, for the continued support, and for allowing us the opportunity to fucking do this. And it's a tough decision to put our lives on display, but I feel like we try to do it with transparency and honesty. So it's a cool fucking thing, man. At the end of the day. So you can find Nate on Instagram at Nate Newton 87. I am on Instagram at The Tradesman Experience. Email is thetradesmanexperience@gmail.com. Website is thetradesmanexperience.com. And if you want to see our faces, the YouTube channel is The Tradesman Experience. Thank you so much.
Nobody wants to see that.
They do. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. Get out there, get shit done. Be proud to be a tradesman. See ya.